Hi, I'm Larry Puckett, the DCC guy. Well, welcome back to the second in the series of videos on the big staging yard build here on the Piedmont Southern layout. So last week we got a lot accomplished. So in this video, we're going to install the yard ladder as one big component that's been soldered together already. And then we're going to install the individual yard tracks that connect to that ladder. As part of that, we have to do the feeders and other wiring associated with each yard track. We'll get the main bus wires run here on the layout in preparation for hooking everything up. Then I want to install the individual cobalt switch machines that I'm going to be using to control each one of the turnouts. And that means installing the linkage for the throw bars and getting everything ready to be wired up for the final connection. So that's a lot to do today, so let's go ahead and we'll get started. But first I want to ask you to do this. Hit that little red subscribe button, and when the little bell comes up, click on it and click all. Thanks now. Now, before we do get started, I do want to give you a little feedback. There were some questions and comments that came up after the last video, so let's take a couple of minutes to address those. So one person asked me about where they can get this honing block. These are available on Amazon. You might be able to pick them up at Home Depot, Lowe's, other big box hardware type stores. And basically it's a steel block here with grit bonded to the surface. These days I think they're using diamond grit, so you might look for that. But just look up honing blocks on Amazon and you'll see what's largely available. You can get a double-sided one of these with different grits on each side for around 15, 16 bucks. So it's not overly expensive of an option. Now, several people asked me why I went with number 6 turnouts instead of some of the newer ladder track designs from Microengineering and number 5s and various things like that, or maybe a split design that's accessed via a Y. Well, there's several reasons for that. First of all, I have the room to do it, and I already had purchased a large supply of Microengineering number 6 turnouts. So I had everything on hand to do it. I had plenty of space to do it in. Now, a much more important consideration is the fact that this is going to be a totally hidden staging yard. So you're not going to be able to see what's going on easily as you would with one that's out in the open. You're not going to be able to just reach in, re-rail a car, whatever. So I wanted something that was going to be very reliable. And so going with a number 6 standard straight yard ladder seemed like one very good option for that. Also, another reason for that is I'm going to be backing long passenger trains and long strings of cars into these staging yards when I'm setting up for an operating session. Now, later on, for the other staging yard at the other end of the layout, it's going to be in the open and has much less space available to it. So I will be probably using the Microengineering yard ladder turnouts for that. The other comment that I got was about my soldering technique and the fact that I was using a pencil tip instead of a flat tip on my soldering iron. And I'm trying, I should have explained that I was trying a new technique where the round tip fits nicely down inside the web of the rail because it's more or less a concave surface down in there. And so my feeling was that by using that rounded tip, the tip would fit down into the web of the rail and transmit heat a lot more efficiently than the flat screwdriver type tip that I had been using in the past. And I think it does a better job myself. And I really like to get as much heat transferred as quickly as possible to the rails so I can get that solder to flow into those rail joiners and limit the amount of heat that does move out from that solder joint area and melt and burn ties. And so far I'm happy with the results I'm getting using this technique. So that's the rationale behind why I've switched and am using the round tip instead of the flat tip for soldering my rail joiners. Whether or not I'll stick with that rounded tip or go back to my flat tip on the soldering iron, I'm not sure yet. But after I've done this yard here, I think I'll have a pretty good feeling for which works best for me. So we'll readdress this at the end of these series of videos after I've had a chance to try this method out on quite a number of rail joiners. So let's go ahead and get started with the work. It's now been 24 hours since I applied the last of the liquid nails for projects under the foam. So I'm now ready to apply the liquid nails to the area of the layout where the yard ladder is going to be laid out. So what I have here then is just a 2-inch plastic knife, putty knife, that I'm going to use and just spread out a thin layer of the liquid nails for projects right here within the boundaries that I outlined in red for the yard ladder. Okay, let's get started then. Let's go back up to the top of the ladder and we'll start spreading it out. I've marked out the location of my points here, so I'm staying away from those. Okay, so that's it. I've got a nice smooth surface, and now it's time to put the yard ladder in place. Okay, I'm just going to show you what I'm doing up here at the head of the ladder, and we'll work our way down. I'll expand out in a minute. But I have my roller handy so I can roll the truck or the turnouts as soon as I get them in place. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to try to keep my shoulder out of the way. Can't guarantee it because it's difficult to place this ladder without moving in on you like that. Okay, now I'm going to roll it, and for that I'm just going to zoom out. That's all smoothed down now. I'm going to go ahead and put the pieces of wood, the 1x stock on here. Actually, I need to start here at the bottom and work up the ladder. So let's go ahead and get that in here. Okay, so that's it. We have the yard ladder installed at this point. We just now have to wait for the adhesive to set up. Before I get started with actually gluing down the track in here and doing the wiring, I want to just run over it with you. Okay, so I've got all of these tracks here that need 2 wires going to them. The red wire here is on the outside rail. The green wire is going to go to the inside rail. Also, I want to be able to isolate the wire going to this inside rail, because what I want to be able to do is use the single pole double throw switch that's built into these Cobalt switch machines to provide power to this inside rail whenever the turnout is thrown for that track. And then whenever the turnout is set to go back straight up the ladder, then I want power to be cut off to this rail. And what that will do is then it will turn power off to this track so that I can throw the turnout for this yard track here, run a train in here, and then throw the switch back, or the set of points back, for the ladder, and that will kill power to this track. So the locomotive will not do any creeping. It's not going to sit in there and drone away, and it's not going to continue to eat up power. So I'll be able to have quite a number of locomotives pre-staged in here with the power turned off to them. So that requires a lot of special wiring for these inside green rails. Going to have a wire going to each one of these and then going back down the yard ladder to the individual switch machine that controls the turnout for that yard track. So basically then I'm going to have, you can see a green and a red line here. Now the red line, that's for the DCC power bus. I only need the red line to actually go up through here. And then at various points, I will take a feeder or a drop off of the red line, run it to the outside rail, make a connection, continue running it underneath the track to the next rail, outside rail, make that connection, and so on, so that these outside rails will be powered all the time. And I'll do that here, and then at another location about 6 to 8 feet down the staging yard. Now, as far as the green wires, now as I said, the green wires will be controlled by the single pole double throw switch that is built in to each one of the IP digital switch machines, and then that's going to have to come underneath the track and then feed down the ladder to the specific IP digital switch machine that is going to control the turnout that goes to that yard track as well. So I'll have a number of these individual wires. So that's a whole bunch of wires that have to come under the track. So what I'm going to do is I've laid out all this track here to get a feeling for the locations of things, and I'm marking the locations for these wires, and the wire runs directly here on the road bed. What I'm going to do is take a razor knife and just cut a trough, basically, a ditch underneath all of these tracks, and run my wires under them that way. And that's one of the great things about having things set up here on top of the staging yard. I don't have to run feeders and wires underneath of this section of the layout. I'll be able to run everything I need on the top of it. I'm also, as you can see here, I'm also going to put my turnout switch machines right on top of the layout and run a connector directly to the points themselves. So that's going to make it easier for maintenance and a lot easier as far as installation goes. But what I want to do now that I've shown you the layout of the wiring, I'm going to go ahead, take my knife, make the cuts through here so I can run my wires, my bus wires in here. Okay, so as I said, I've already cut my trough. You can see that. So that's going to allow me to run wires underneath the tracks. But I wanted to show you how I'm doing the wiring because I'm doing it a little bit different. I'm not using my suitcase connectors or soldered joints. What I'm using are these, they're called an Insure connector. They're just a push-in connector. Basically, if you look close here, you can see it's got 3 little slots here on the bottom, and you can see from the side here, there's 3 slots in here. And basically, all you have to do is strip your wire a 1/2 inch long and then push it into these little holes until it grips on the inside. There's a metal fixture inside that grips the bare wire. Okay, I'm looking at the rating here. With solid wire, you can go from number 12 gauge down to a number 20. With stranded wire, you can go from 12 to 16 gauge. And with 10 bonded stranded, you can go from 14 to 18 gauge. So that gives you some options. I picked this whole bag up. I believe I got it at Lowe's Hardware. So it should be available in the electrical department of most of your big box hardware stores like Lowe's, Home Depot, Menards, those kind of guys. You could probably order these off of Amazon if you can't find them locally. I'm sure they have those in the UK. And again, one of my viewers at one point or another suggested that I try these. So I picked up a bag and figured I'd give it a shot. And this seemed like a good application. So what I've got here then is I've got 2 of my 16 gauge stranded wires that are going to be the main run across here. And then I've got I think it's an 18 gauge wire that I'm going to be using to connect to the sides of the rail. So that's going to just fit right down in here. So you can see then I'll be attaching to the main DCC bus right here with this wire. This one will come out. That's going to be soldered to the side of the rail that goes through here. And then the other wire then goes out and daisy chained to another one of these at this point. So I wanted to go ahead and show you how you go about inserting everything in here. Okay, so I'm just going to push this in here and see how we do. There we go. I don't know if you can see it, but you can see in this clear part, the copper wire has protruded up into the fixture. So that's a good tight one there. And you just basically have to get a feel after you've done a few of these for just the right amount of twist on those stranded wires so they won't crumple going up in the fixture. Okay, let me go ahead. Now this is the good old solid copper, so this is an 18 gauge. It'll go right up in here. I'm going to put that in the center one. We'll see. You can see that one just goes right up through there. No problem at all. Hopefully you can see that. I know there's a lot of glare from my lights on this at times, but that went right up in there. Okay, so I've got the one with the 2 wires in it and the one with 3 wires. So we're going to daisy chain those together real quick here and give it a push up inside. And I can just barely see the copper wire protruding up in there now. So that looks like a good solid one, and I'll give it a tug, and they are fairly solid in there. So what that gives me is, it gives me the wire that's going to be connected to the power bus, and it gives me this feeder that's going to go to the first track, and then the extension that goes out to the next one, with another feeder that's going to go to the next track, the second track in line, and then another wire that can be daisy chained to another one of these. I'm going to go ahead and build this set of feeders that are going to feed the rails, and I'll show you how it looks once I get done. I've put it all together. I've daisy chained the power bus for the red rail all the way across here with the individual little wires already stripped and prepared, ready to be attached to the side of the rail to provide that power. And I have to do another one of these down at the other end of the yard and about another 6 feet in order to get power provided to my rails. Well, as soon as I finish doing the push-in connector approach for wiring these bus wires to go out to the tracks, I immediately thought, well, you know, that wasn't the easiest thing in the world to do. So let's see how it would go if I used my suitcase connectors. So this is what I did. You can see I've already installed the entire string of all 9 droppers or feeders for the rails, and I just used a suitcase connector at each one of those points to do that. So this is what it looks like. Very simple, straightforward. I just cut the length of 16 gauge wire that I needed, and also the 3-inch long feeders to go out to solder to the sides of the rails. Popped them together and squeezed them, and that was it. Okay, it went a lot faster with these than with those push-in type connectors. So for now, I think I'm going to be sticking with my suitcase connectors for this type of wiring work. Well, after I got through telling you about how much easier it was to go ahead and use my suitcase connectors instead of these push-pulls, I went back to the first string that I had put in, ripped out the push-pulls, and you can see them there on the left, and within a few minutes simply replaced them with this string made up with the suitcase connectors. It was that much faster and easier, plus it was easier to get them to fit below the level of the top of the styrofoam, so they're not going to interfere at all with traffic moving along the tracks, and they're not going to get in the way of me laying the tracks. So that's what prompted me to go ahead and replace these push-pulls and get them out of the way. Well, that's a wrap for today's video. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get as much done as I said in the opening with all of the wiring that I did. It always seems like wiring takes about twice as long to do as I initially anticipate. So instead of dragging this out and making this video 30 minutes or more in length, I'm going to go ahead and release the video as it is now, put it out early, and particularly since we're coming up on Christmas weekend, and so I figure I'll get this out early, and you guys can watch it over the next week, and then probably on Monday or Tuesday after Christmas, I'll go ahead and come out with another video that will catch up with all of the other parts of this project that I have not been able to include in this video. And for those of you that have stuck with me to the end of the video here, I want to share something with you. In the previous video, I said that I was going to be doing something special with the control panel. So I'm going to share with you right now what that is. DCC Concepts has come out with a new system for control panels. They call it ESP Wireless. And what that means is that they have components both in the control panel box itself as well as on the layout that will allow you to control your turnouts in a staging yard is what I'm going to use, but on your layout as a whole without any physical connections to the layout itself. So once I get the control panel built, I'll be able to walk out into my driveway and still throw switches here in the staging yard without any problems. So I'm going to be installing that into the control panel here for the staging yard on the Piedmont Southern. And for anyone interested, I've included a video link right here and at the end for you so that you can take a look at a YouTube video that shows how this system works. We'll be taking a look at all of the components that go into the ESP wireless system, how it works, what each component does, and how it all fits together. And it has a lot of built-in flexibility. It's one of these systems that, because of the way it operates, you can use it on an AC powered layout, a DC powered layout, or a DCC powered layout. Well, enough about it. I don't want to give it all away. So take a look at that video if you're interested. And we'll be building the control panel here probably in about 2 weeks. So it's going to be a little while yet before I get around to it, because I have to get all of the switch machines installed, all of the wiring completed before we can go ahead and proceed with the control panel itself and getting that installed. So that part of the series on the staging yard is going to be probably the most exciting part of this as a whole, because I'm telling you, I was wowed when I first saw this video that I'm giving you a link to as to what the capabilities of this ESP wireless system are. So have a great weekend, stay safe, avoid the Omicron variant, and I'll be back here next week with another video early in the week from the DCC guy. Bye now.